Welcome to the Wholesaling Inc. podcast. I am your host, Chris Arnold, and I am very excited about this episode because we're talking about a piece of technology that's changing the real estate game, particularly if you are an investor that really wrestles a little bit with how to make sure you're getting an accurate repair amount on the property. And on top of that, knowing that you have the right ARV. And if you're new to the game, that's what the value of the property is once it's fixed up. And let me tell you this, imagine that you had a very inexpensive product, a piece of software that you knew with accuracy would be able to help you determine how much repairs a property needs in the ARV. It's here. I'm talking about Rehab Estimator Pro. And if you've heard of Rehab Estimator Pro, the main goal today is to talk to you about a lot of the new features and benefits that are being rolled out, because right now this thing is on fire. I know because I've talked about it. We've had a ton of people in Wholesaling Inc. sign up for this and go, man, this has been a game changer for my business. And I don't know what I was doing before when I didn't have this, right? So I've got Matt Hedstrom on today. Welcome, Matt. What's happening, buddy? How are you?
I'm doing great, man. Loving life down here in North Carolina today.
Yeah, if you don't know who Matt is the owner, founder of Rehab Estimator Pro. And so he's coming in today. I was like, Matt, what's coming down the pipeline? Like, what can we expect to see with some changes? And we're going to talk about those today. But let's take a step back. If someone is not familiar with Rehab Estimator Pro, let's talk about a few things that this thing does real quickly. One of the things you always say is there's two things you can't get wrong. Right? If you get wrong, how much it's going to cost to repair a property, or number two, what the value of that property is, the ARV once it's fixed up, you're in trouble. Talk a little bit about this is the problem that you've solved.
Yeah, man, it's with people getting in the game, you know, we walk through so many steps and we learn all about direct mail. It's like drinking from a fire hose, right? Jumping in the game. We see all these things out there, but man, two basic things you can't ever screw up in any deal. And that's what you are going to sell it for in the end, that after repair value and the repair costs. There's so many great trainings and there's so many great tools for ARV with comps out there. There's training involved, that's for sure. But when it comes to the repairs, it's such a mystery. It's so mysterious, right? Like people are just pulling numbers out of the air. There's really no standard in the business. We have a standard for ARV, all right? It's the MLS. There are other tools that you can use, but there's no standard for repair cost, and it's got to be there, and we're here to set that standard.
Absolutely. And I want to touch on that point again, which I think is really important, right? And that is, everyone's familiar with the multiple listing service. It's been around forever. Can you imagine trying to figure out what the value of a house is without the MLS? There's no way we could do it. Nope. But yet there is not a system that we all really rely upon, that we all agree is accurate to help us determine the repair value. Like, it's crazy when you step back and you think about it. And of the two, the one that's actually harder is the rehab estimate, not the ARV. I mean, you can go to Zillow and get a Zestimate. I mean, they've pretty much been able to get in and automate that process, but figuring out exactly what it's going to cost to fix up a property, it's crazy that there's no system that we're all relying on. And that's what Rehab Estimator Pro is going to be. Now, the last thing around this before we go into the updates, which I know people want to hear, is on average, if you walk into a house utilizing this software, how long is it going to take you to figure out the rehab estimate on a property?
We want people to be able to go in without a tape measure, Chris, and get into a house. Okay. Again, no tape measure, no ladder. We want you to get in and out in less than 13 minutes. Okay.
Fantastic.
And it works.
And that's great. I mean, it's huge because I think for most, why don't you probably describe what the new investor's feeling when they first walk into that house? Why don't you describe that?
Man, it is a complete feeling of being overwhelmed. Like, and there's such a fear that comes across with, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to screw this up. I'm going to miss something, where REP gives you that checklist even, so that you're not missing anything. But that feeling of being completely overwhelmed, like you have no business being here, this removes the fear of that.
I agree. And I'll be honest and tell you, I'm not a guy that really even knows how to hammer a nail. So when I got into real estate, this aspect of it was really overwhelming for me because my brain just is not mechanical. I'm not a person that fixes things, right? I'm more on the visionary side. And because of that, something like this coming along really kind of settled a lot of that fear that
Yeah.
I know I would have had in the beginning. I wish I had this when I
Right.
first got into real estate a long time ago. So let's go into some of these kind of new updates and features, which I think are cool. So talk to us about kind of this, what we're calling a modifier for a market, because I know the objection people have. Well, the costs are different based on what city I'm in. So let's talk about this a little bit.
Right. So this is something that we are testing, and we're launching this soon, but I want it to be just kind of a guide, because that really is such a big objection that everybody has, and I believe it's unfounded, because I ask, hey, look, I'm in North Carolina right now. I did a bunch of projects for my son down here. Okay, he's in the Marine Corps. He's Camp Lejeune. He actually had to travel today, out. And I was talking to contractors, visiting job sites, taking pictures. I'm always updating pricing, getting a good feel for things, right? And so people say, hey, look, well, how can my prices be the same here in my market? I'm in North Carolina as it is in where you're from, Wisconsin. And I say, look, I went to Lowe's down here, okay, Home Depot. It's the same exact prices that I see in Wisconsin, or that I see in Texas, or that I see in even San Francisco, right? In California. A gallon of paint doesn't cost any more or less. So when it comes to subcontractors and labor pricing, it really is generally the same. But I'm creating, and I have a full market list now for every market in the US of multipliers. And even though some of them are like, 1.1, so it's just 10% more that you can put right into REP. Say, I'm in Wisconsin, right in between Milwaukee, and then also in between Chicago, Illinois, right? But what about Indianapolis market? Well, the difference there is only 8 or 9%, maybe 10%. It's really not that much, but at least now you have a market glance to look at to decide whether or not you want to apply that multiplier.
Yeah. And I think that's huge. I mean, that removes, I think, really the biggest objection everyone has. And hey, I feel like my market might be a little bit different. And what you've been able to do is go, okay, really that's not true. But if you do feel that way, like you need to change it a little bit, I'm just going to build this out in here to just get rid of this argument altogether. So if you want to run it at 1.1 or 1.2 to give yourself a little space because you think your market's different, great. But here's the fundamental thing. It now works, of course, in every market without question. There's nothing else for debate there, which I think is huge. Now, let's go to this next feature. Again, you might have multiple salespeople or multiple people using the account, and you've kind of created this new feature on the master account. Talk to me about this, because I know for my team, this was one of the things we were asking about on our side, and you built it, which I think is great. What is it?
So this is huge, yeah, like for you guys, but I don't want anybody, I want everybody, even if you're just starting and you haven't even done your first deal, right? I want you to, in your mind, always be thinking and having vision. What happens when I have 5 acquisition guys under me, or 10, right? That's where we need to be thinking, and that's where we need to always be in that place of seeing yourself in that position.
Begin with the end in mind, right?
Yep,
Begin
right,
with the end in mind.
Same thing. Phil Mickelson, he visualized every single shot before it went in, right? Like that's how it works. So you need to put yourself in that place. Just don't say, oh, this doesn't apply to me, right? So, but you can have a master account, which you do, where you have 10 acquisition people, or 2 or 5, whatever, under you, and you can see all of their accounts at once and see what they're working on, but they can't see each other's accounts. So even if you have competition within your own business, and I don't even want to call it competition, but as a leadership team you're running, okay, you can have those people where they're not seeing each other's deals that they're working on, but you can see them all as the account holder.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I'm going to speak to this. Yeah, you might be newer to the game, might not have your salesperson, but these are the type of things that you're glad you have in place, because here's what happens. You build a system like this, your company becomes reliant on it. And if it's not built to scale, then it's like 2-3 years down the road, you're like, man, I got to jump to another system because this doesn't support the team side. And why I love your product is not only is it for the brand new person, it's also for the more sophisticated advanced person that's scaling a big team. And again, I applaud you for thinking that way, because you have to serve both sides of the spectrum, new to definitely more advanced, which I think is cool. Now let's hit on this third feature. I feel like for someone new to the game, looking at Rehab Estimator Pro, this alone pays for itself outside of the software. And that is, you have spent over 10 grand on this. you've gone out, you've consulted with a lot of the top real estate investors in the country, and you've built in what would be considered the best one-page contract possible to send over. I see posts on this all the time, Matt. It's like, I need to go to attorney. I need to pay to get a one-page contract. What's the best one? Mine's 4. It's too long. I need it to be 1. You've actually just added this in, which is huge.
Yeah, we love it, man, because it's a combination of not only the money involved, but the time, and taking everybody's, a lot of people are able to whittle it down to 2 to 3 page contracts, right? So we took just a ton of those and brought all the best pieces together that you need to close and to protect yourself, right? Especially as a new wholesaler, you really need to understand, we don't want a bunch of weasel clauses in there, right, to get out of these things, but we still want to protect ourselves in a way that we're still honoring that seller, okay? And so we've built all these things, and I close with it all the time. And so that's the thing. It even has a spot on there to say, hey, look, I even have a disclaimer where you can cross out the box whether or not you're a realtor. So that, because a lot of times, you have this notion that, well, I'm a realtor, so I have to use the state document. Well, there's a disclosure right on here that says, hey, I'm a realtor, but I'm not acting in this capacity right now. I'm acting as an investor. So we've got it all down to 1 page. You can use it in any state to close. But, of course, if you want to consult with your attorney, for sure, have them look it over.
Yeah. And of course, if you've got your own contract that for some reason you're like, I love this thing, you can also upload that in there as well. So again, what I like is you create this ability to customize. I can use it or I can use my own, which is a lot of what I think creates value to this system, because I like flexibility within a system. Now, the other thing I think is important is always integration. And so Rehab Estimator Pro, REP, is now communicating with Podio, right? So now we're moving over into automation into your CRM system. So talk a little bit about that. I think that's really cool that you're that advanced now.
Yep. So really cool feature. And it was one of those things I came to my developer and said, hey man, I want to integrate with Podio. And it's another one of those, can we just leave simple alone? And it's like, no, it'll be simple. All you got to do is integrate it. Right. So I say, but so getting into, again, as a wholesaler and as newbies, sometimes you hear about all these big CRM systems, and some of them cost hundreds, some of them cost, a lot more. Podio is one that is so great because it's free. You can customize it yourself. There's a lot of great templates out there. And so now you're able to just push everything you want into it. So say you've got your property, you want to push the comps into it, you want to push the repair estimate, you want to push your offer. You can attach it right to your properties within Podio. They communicate now.
I think that that's awesome. And on top of it now, integrating with Podio. And again, if you're new and you're like, how big is that? Dude, trust me, if you have software systems that are talking to each other, it makes your life so much easier. So again, either that's going to be applicable now, or it's the same thing, begin with the end in mind. You're going to be really grateful that this does this. Now, let's go over to this kind of Zestimate feature, because I think a lot of people need to be clear that they understand that Rehab Estimator Pro not only allows you to figure out what the repair amount is on a property so you can make the most profit, it also helps you with the after repair value. There's that built in as well, so you're getting both. So what's the new feature that we're seeing with more support around the after repair value?
Awesome. Great question, man. And I'm glad you saw that too, because this is a deal where I looked at this feature and thought, when we built this out in the first place, and was like, okay, that's cute. We'll leave that there, right? It's nice, it grabs Zillow comps, like a lot of other, systems do. But as I've begun to use this, I'm shocked all the time more and more at how it is so reliable now for my comps. So yes, I'm still doing my due diligence with the MLS, but we've actually layered the comps from Zillow on top of each other. So once it finds a good comp, it goes out and finds comps on those comps. And so now we've added, I'll add this first before I go into that. I've been a general contractor for over 25 years. And so when I would approach a job, a big remodel job, retail, so people that are coming and spending 50 grand on a bathroom, right? So I would look at it from so many different avenues. I would find prices from 4 different areas, right? And just kind of bring that all together to make sure I wasn't missing anything. Well, with these comps, we're doing the same thing. We're putting comps on top of comps. We're adding the Zestimate in there now that you can see, which wasn't there before. And now we're putting square footage values on, dollar per square foot. You hear that a lot as a new investor, but you're really like, okay, well, what does that mean? That's a little mysterious to me. Well, now you can see it right in REP. Hey, this is your dollar per square foot number. Here's your comps with $1 per square foot number. So really what you're doing is just kind of layering again, Chris, with those, hey, here's a Zestimate, here's what the ARV says, out of REP, here's what the dollar per square foot. You're really just bringing all these pieces together to get a good idea of what that market value should be.
Yeah. And it's like list stacking, right? There's no difference. It's the ability to layer data on top of data. And the more data you're layering, the more accurate you're going to get. And so, I totally get it. I think that there's value that you're layering more and more data to help us get closer to more of an automated after repair value. Again, we're not saying don't check it with the MLS, but we're definitely giving you a faster view of what it potentially is automatically right up front, like a snap of a finger, which I think is really important as well. And if you're listening, obviously you want to put a face with the name. See, Matt, I was giving him a hard time because he's growing his beard out. He's sitting on the porch. I love it. Definitely go to YouTube. And of course, my YouTube channel is YouTube. Go to Chris Arnold Real Estate and subscribe. And you can always put a face with the name. So let's go to expanding the equations, because some people listening are like, okay, I do some wholesaling, I do some fix and flip, but I'm on the creative financing side as well. I might be doing subject to different things like that. You're actually building out the ability to now start to support equations outside of just traditional fix and flip and wholesale. Talk to us about that. I think this is cool.
Yeah, man, it really is. I'm super excited about this. And it's because mainly, we don't want to keep building, adding more features where it gets more complicated, right? The confused mind says no, and that's typical, when we start adding all these things. So we don't want to keep building all these extra pieces. We want to keep the simplicity there. So we're not going to tell you, here's a project management tool, here's a flip kit, here's a CRM now. But with these equations, this keeps it simple where it just says, hey, by the way, here you inputted this data, and it's just going to spit this all out for you. Here's what a subject to deal looks like. Maybe you don't know what that looks like. Here's what your wholesale calculation looks like. And you put your number on there, whether it's 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, 10,000. All right. So you can see all of these things now. Now the coding is very complex. The calculations are very complex. We used to have cash on cash return. Well, that's confusing as well for a lot of people. So now we've built it out to show you cash flow, because that's really what happens, all right? And especially if you have no cash in the deal, which if you're just starting out and you don't have any money in, the cash on cash return numbers there's an infinity, number that shows up because there's nothing there. But cash flow is very different. Now, again, the equations are complex, but when you see it and it's all displayed, it's very simple because it just breaks it all down for you because the coding's been done for you.
Yeah. And Matt, the more we use this system in my company, the more you continue to expand it. I just realized, man, there's just nothing out there like this right now. Like, where else do you go to get this type of support from really a software tech standpoint? Right. And that's why I love it. You really are the only one that scratched this itch, and it's a huge itch that we all have, which I think is huge. Now, if you're listening, you're probably like, man, I bet this thing is expensive. How much does it cost? Normally it's $97 a month, but for the Wholesaling community, people listening and so forth, they always expect us as coaches to get deals for everyone. I always get hit up. Give me a promo code, Chris, give me a deal off of this. So you got a deal now where it's 70% off a month, and that's permanent. That's not for a couple months, but you get locked in at $29, right? $29.99 a month. And you're getting everything that we're talking about for that. That's a no-brainer. That's about as inexpensive that you get. And Matt, I know you've had a lot of people at the upper level, meaning people that are friends with you that have tech and so forth have you should be charging a lot more than this. But you said, hey, I realize there's a lot of the new people out there that need this. And I just want to make this a product that literally everyone uses. It becomes like a household feature. So therefore, I'm going to do things like do 70% off. So man, if you're interested, go to rehabestimatorpro.com. Again, that's Rehab Estimator Pro. And to get that 70% off, the promo code is REI Radio. Again, that's REI Radio, one word. There's no capitalization on that. So let's hit on this last piece here. And this kind of comes into the environment because we've heard a lot of people going, man, I've really utilized Zoom and video when it comes to now dealing with the seller because, for a period of time, we couldn't go into a seller's house. And depending on where you're at, depending on the time that you're listening to. Still, some of that's been a challenge, but some of us have realized, like, why were we going into houses in the first
Right. Right.
Like, we kind of like going through a house from our office via Zoom with the seller on the other side. So now you've come in with this last really cool feature, and now Zoom is working with us. So talk to us about that, because I feel like everyone now is very clear on having to utilize Zoom. There's not anyone that, again, all the people late to the game were forced to get into the game on Zoom. So talk to us about this last piece.
Yeah, this was something I think all of us were, it was a little tricky to navigate at first. So we were all like, okay, what do we do? We've had people send video, we've done FaceTime, but Zoom is just so easy where we can get them on the phone call, because you can ask them, hey, can you walk over to that corner quick? I'd like to see the basement in that corner, if you're in a basement area, right? So adding that feature where you can just schedule a Zoom session is absolutely key, man, because it does change our business. Plus, we don't know, man, what does the fall bring? Right? Like, is there going to be a whole nother COVID, deal that, another strain that comes out? I mean, this will impact our lives forever, I believe. So getting used to a new way of doing business is great for everyone. And having this feature where part of what we do now, when we get a call, we'll ask them, hey, are you COVID sensitive? It's an easy question. Just hey, are you COVID sensitive? We have some ways that we can, do this without invading your home or social distancing. Are you sensitive to that? I don't think that's a one-time thing anymore, in this country. I think that we'll probably be dealing with this for a while. So you might as well invest now, right?
And I love the fact that you've got, again, it comes down to flexibility within the system. If you feel like either because you want to stay virtual or you're dealing with a seller that's demanding that you stay virtual for whatever reason, you now have the capacity to do that now that this is working with Zoom, which I think is really awesome as well. So again, no brainer. The reason I continue to talk to you about this program is because I feel like, man, if we could quantify how much pain that you've resolved or lost money simply because you've created a software for $29.99 that allows us to really figure out the rehab. I go back before this, and Matt, I can remember deals in which I was wrong on that number, and man, that was painful. I don't know if you're listening, you had to bring money to the closing table yet, but it's painful. That's not a closing you look forward to. And really what Matt's done is trying to minimize that ever happening throughout your real estate career with this software. And I think that because of that, how could you ever quantify the value that something like this is going to have? So go to rehabestimatorpro.com, put in that promo code REI Radio to get that 70% off per month. And Matt, it was awesome to have you. And as always, if you're listening, remember we are coaching people around the country on doing radio. We've got markets that are sold out. I've got guys texting me now because we started like December, January. So now the fruit of everyone being on radio, contracting properties, now closing deals, like that whole loop is hit. And I have people going, I closed the deal for $25K. I just closed my first one, for 10, 15, just like those numbers are popping through. And it's really cool just to see the effect that radio is going to have. So like you're kind of changing the industry with Rehab Estimator Pro, I guarantee you a couple years from now, we're going to look back and be like, wow, radio came in and really changed the industry when the industry was looking for something as a marketing channel that they could rely on. So again, if you want to book a call, learn a little bit more about radio as well, see if your market's open and add that as a marketing channel for 2020, go to wholesalinginc.com/REI Radio. Again, wholesalinginc.com/REI Radio. Matt, thanks for hanging out. Thanks for all the updates, man. You've been busy.
Yeah, man, love it. It's a pleasure for me because I love helping people, and they're such great tools, man. Such great tools.
Well, I appreciate it. Until next time, until we add value again, we will catch you later. Thanks so much, Matt.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, man.